Hi. Hi. Da, 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 da. Hi. Hello, Jennifer. Hi. Hi everybody. So today's video is going to be about Lisa Lam's bag making Bible. Hi guys. So I'm Becky Alexander Frost. Most of you know me as Baffa. So yeah, I've been sewing for nearly 28 years now, and I've been bag making for 10 of those years. I'm a bit nervous today because it's been a bit of an emotional morning, and all those Sewing Quarter fans will understand that. Anyway, so yeah, deep breath. Hi guys. Right, so who watched Sewing Quarter this morning? I just want to know. Can you hear me loud and clear? Hi. Right, okay, so can you let me know if you can hear me, and give me a thumbs up, hearts and all that lot, and also can you tell me where you're actual listening, well, watching from? Eating chocolates, oh, the best bits. That's what Christmas is all about. Yeah. Who's gone back to work? Because my husband's sad he's gone back to work for a few days. So, yeah. Right, so thanks to Lisa Lam. I spoke to Lisa Lam a couple of weeks, well, say a couple of weeks, about a month ago, and asked her if I could, because I know a lot of people in the group are beginners and never made a bag before. So I wanted to ask Lisa Lam if I could borrow one of her patterns out of her books to demonstrate a beginner's bag. The reason why I chose this book is because it's helped me a lot in the process of bag making and stuff like that. So I approached Lisa Lam if I could make a bag. First of all, I chose a bag that I thought, oh yeah, everybody'd be able to make it. But I chose quite a hard one, and then I went back and rethought it out, and I've gone for one of the basic ones in her book. So now this is going to be back to front, and I'm sorry, I still haven't figured out how to make things look right on Facebook Live. But it's the Lisa Lam bag, the bag making Bible. It's got, I think it's about 8 patterns in there, but each section, I don't know if you can see it, but there is all different colours. Each section helps you with going from a beginner all the way to an advanced intermediate. So the beginner bags are brilliant, and I must admit I've learnt something new with the bag that I'm going to make, and they're these notches that she basically puts onto these pattern pieces that join up to the other pattern pieces, and I think it's actually really good idea. I might pinch that one day. I'm only kidding. Right, so you might have seen on the title there is a giveaway as well, so if you carry on watching all the way to the end, there is a giveaway, and it's running until the 6th of January, where the publishers have been so nice, and that's David and Charles Publishers, have donated 4 books, which Lisa Lam has signed them. Well, no, she sent me her signatures, and I've printed them out and I've stuck them into the books. And I've also gone out, knowing full well that this live was going ahead, I've gone out and brought 4 kits to get bag makers started. Wolverhampton, that's down the road from me. Right, so 4 lucky winners will win a book each, plus a kit each as well, plus there will also be a voucher to spend in my shop as well for each winner. So I'll tell you how to enter that at the end of this video. Okay, so this video is going to be over 2 parts. Today is all about how I interfaced the bag, how I prepped the pattern pieces, because you do have to prep the pattern pieces first, and then I will start making the bag, and then I've got my dates down here. On January the 8th, I will come back on air to finish the bag off, and I will basically announce the 4 lucky winners as well. Okay? So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Now, most of you that do have, that actually have watched in the past, may not get their questions answered straight away. They will know. You know this. The screen's so small, I can't hardly see some of the actual some of the questions that pop up. So I will pop on afterwards, after the live show, and answer all the questions. But I also hope, I know my admin are in here, they might be able to actually answer some of those questions as we go along, or there might be someone within the group that can answer these questions as well. Okay, right, first of all, who has actually got this book? Because I must admit, it's a really good book. This is my personal copy. It is actually a bit teared inside. So each section, as you can see, has got a colour. So you base a colour on the actual bit here. That's basically making you go to the next step within the book and learning about likes of the first 5 sections, the basic sections, and the basic things you need to know about bag making. So you've got like the basic equipment that you will need, like your rotary cutters. Can everybody see me? Because Jane's just said that they can't see my video. Please. Right, so there is 5 sections that are going to help you along the way. So there is like the basic tools that you will need to get yourself started. Most of the basic tools you probably already have as sewers anyway. So, but there is other tools mentioned in there that you might want to grab hold of. And now, don't worry, I will. Thanks, Susan, one of my admin. I will actually put a link to where you can actually buy this book from at the end of the video, within the comments and other places as well. And you might as well grab it if you haven't got it already when it's in the sales, because obviously the sales are on at the moment. There's also machine basics as well, and like I've taught in the past, is where you can sometimes release the pressure of the machine, of the presser foot. It talks about that on the later bags, I noticed within the book, so that might be a thing that you might need to look into if you're thinking of buying a new machine in the future or something. It also talks about bag anatomy, which when you're a bag maker beginner, I might say body front, which is obvious, or the flap, which is obvious. But if I say bag base or base gusset, you wouldn't know. So Lisa has actually explained the anatomy of the bag, which is very, very good. And it will also tell you the parts that you don't understand in the technical bag patterns that are out there from the bigger designers like Lisa Lam. There is also with your pattern, she explains about your pattern. So each pattern, each bag that comes within the actual the book, so that, like I say, there's about 8 bags to make. They're all under a different coloured section. The pattern piece that you pull out, so here's one here, this says chapter 8. This is the hobo bag, right? So it's orange, So that will be under the orange section. I don't know if you can actually see that, it's orange. So that will be under the orange section, so it's easier to find within the book. So it's very clear, because sometimes you get these books that have got these pull-out patterns and you could be there for ages trying to find all these pattern pieces that you need. Well, the good thing about this book, it's colour coordinated to that actual section, and those sections within the book are just self-explanatory as you go along, and each section will teach you something new each time. So for instance, you might not hit a certain type of stabilizer at the start, but by the time, when I say stabilizer, I mean foam and stuff like that. You might not hit it at the start, but by the end of the book you will be using it if you make those so many bags as you go along. Also, in the book, she teaches you how to draw out the pattern. So for example, mine's fallen apart because I've actually already made this years ago. I always draw on, if I'm tracing from a pattern that's pulled out from a book, I always draw on greaseproof paper or parchment paper. Then I stick it onto some heavy duty A4 or card. And then you've got to make sure you put all the markings, and I know this is back to front, but you've got to make sure you put all these little markings on that you need to match it up with all the other pattern pieces. For example, the pattern piece, the large pattern piece, has actually got some markings. They will all match up, and that's one thing I've liked about the patterns within this book, is all the markings from each pattern piece will match up together when you come to make the final bag. Right, so now I'm going to get on to making the bag. The bag that I'm making is on page I did have it written down, but I've lost the piece of paper. Is on page 42. It's the second part. So we're actually making this bag here. It's actually called the reversible bucket bag, but big sister in Australia wants it and she said she doesn't want it reversible, so which then I thought is going to be easier for the other people that are brand new bag makers and want to get into bag making but are a bit too scared. And I advise you not to be scared at all, because hi guys, hi Lisa, Lisa Lam in the house. So don't be scared. You can make mistakes as you go along, but you have your best friend. Your best friend is your called your unpicker. So trust me, it does work. So, and don't be scared, because it's only fabric at the end of the day. It's fabric that you can probably just go out and buy from the charity shop or whatever. Just go out there and buy a bed sheet to make a mock-up, or calico. Most of my bag patterns actually start off as calico. So calico's so cheap on the market these days, where you can actually make as many bags out of it. And you buy these tote bags from the likes of big independent stores. I'm not naming big independent stores, but they have calico reusable bags. So if you're starting off in bag making but don't want to use very expensive fabric, go out there and buy some calico. It's like no more than £3 a metre. So it's worth a thing to have in your stash anyway. I know a lot of pattern designers have. I miss your happy face. I miss you guys too. I do. After this morning, I was in a bit of a tears. So yeah, yeah. But the advert got me cheered up again. So I'm wondering if many of you actually saw that advert. I actually forgot about that laughing attack me and John had. So yeah. Anyway, so I'm gonna get on to making the bag. Let me just move those. And John is right. I will be one of his guests on his show. I've been trying to keep it quiet, but John, bless him, he approached me. I cried like a baby. He approached me the day we found out. No, the second visit, because I found out a visit before my last visit, and John approached me and he asked me, and I said, yeah, I would be honoured, because it's the fact that it's John, and yeah, he's like a dad. He's a dad in the sewing world to me. Right, so jumping onto the bag pattern, or else we'll be here all day. I'm not going to touch the binding in this session. The binding will make your handles, but I advise you to cut it out. So I will show you how I've cut that out in a minute. So for my outer fabric, I've used Tula Pink, of course I have. And on the back of my fabric, I haven't actually fused it well here, but on the back of my fabric, I've used interfacing. So the interfacing that I've used, and most of you will know that I favour Buckram Light over, but he's only 39. I know I'm 36 as well, so that's a bit cringy. On the back of my fabric, I've used Buckram, which I will leave in the comments where I buy it from, which is Tanya Fabrics group on Facebook. Buckram is, for those who don't know what Buckram is a medium weight woven interfacing, but it works a bit like the Americans call it SF101. It works a lot like that, and they use it in the upholstery, can't say more words, upholstery industry. So might be best to, and I'll tell you something, it's so cheap. It's actually cheaper than some non-wovens, and it's wider. So it's £3 or £3.50 from Tanya's. So yeah, it might be something that you might want to invest in. Also, it makes your fabric feel like it's canvas, so it's a bit more heavier duty. And then on the back of the interfacing, I've fused Visaline H640. I have loads of that stuff. It's basically what they used to sell on the Sewing Quarter. So I've done that for both of my outer pieces, and then my lining pieces I've only just interfaced with the medium weight interfacing. The medium weight interfacing, I've used the same Buckram, but if you can't get Buckram, normal standard medium interfacing, as long as it's iron on and it's basically very strong and doesn't tear or burn or anything like that. For my base, for my outer base, I have actually gone one step bit more than what the pattern calls for. So the pattern calls for your outer fabric, then it calls for your interfacing, and then it calls for you to use your heavy, which is like what I've used on the others, which is your fleece. But because I want it to be a stronger bottom, I've gone for what I was talking about in my interfacing video and stabilised video. I've gone and used heavy Decaville. So that's Decaville 2, I think it is. But it's the heavier version. It's the stronger and it's slightly thicker. So what I've ended up having to do is I trimmed it back by the seam allowance. So the seam allowance is 1 centimetre on this bag, and I've trimmed that back. And then on the lining piece, which is this fabric, I've only just interfaced it. So, and then for the binding, haven't prepped the binding because the binding is, what do you think of Decaville? I bought a few meters, then reduced to, so just show yeah, Decaville is basically what I've used on top of my interface in here, but this is heavy Decaville. You've got two types of Decaville, which is light Decaville and heavy Decaville. The light Decaville is what Sewing Quarter used to sell, but there's nothing stopping you cutting two of these like pieces out and then ironing them on top of each other, and then that will make it the same thickness as the heavy. That's what I do when I'm running out of the heavy. So I normally buy both light and heavy at the same time, just because I know I use a lot of heavy in a lot of my bags. And you will notice that coming up over the next few months when my new patterns are released, or patterns from Sewing Quarter that I can release. They are being slightly revamped to how I would want them to be made, because Sewing Quarter used to advise us what they had in stock, and unfortunately some of the things that I use wasn't what Sewing Quarter used. So yeah, I'm rewriting every pattern that I've written for Sewing Quarter slowly, and they are being revamped, but I'm not selling all of them. Half of them are going to be free to the Facebook group, okay? So don't worry. So the binding, you do have to cut it on the bias. Sorry Becky, I told you before you showed it the leg costume. Shaft. You have to cut it on the bias because round the bucket of the top of the bag is basically like U-shapes all the way around. So I just advise you to cut it as, I'm really hoping that you understand what the bias of the fabric is. If not, put in the comments, and then the next session on the 8th, I will basically draw a diagram of what the bias is, what the weft is, and what the grain is of the fabric, so you basically know what to cut for the actual bias strips that Lisa asks you to make. So I'm not going to read out measurements because they're all in the book. So you need two pieces smaller than the other two. The two pieces are for the front face and the back face of the top of the bag, and the larger ones are for the side, and it also makes the handle. So, but we won't be using these this week. So if you wanted to sew along and get up to speed for next session on the 8th, then you don't have to do the bias if you've not done the bias before, and I will teach you how to do the bias and how to cut it out via a diagram. Right, so I'm going to start. So I'm going to move the camera down. I'm hoping you actually can see this. So I'm starting off with my lining first, and I'm going to get both pieces right sides together, and I'm going to match up the edges. I'm hoping. Yep. Now if you've got some wonder clips, use those wonder clips too. And I'm just actually pegging down the two sides. Right. Did everybody have a nice Christmas? Because we had a really quiet one. Uneventful this year. Last year was manic with my mum being in hospital. Right, so on my machine I'm using a totally contrasted thread so you can actually see what I'm sewing. and I'm sewing with a walking foot, but with this bag I actually originally tried out the pattern and I did it without a walking foot. So you don't need a walking foot if you're using H640, but if you're going to use foam, you'll need a walking foot. Also, because I'm using, for my outer base, I'm using PU, I've put a size 16 needle into my actual machine. And also, people have been asking what type of thread to use. I'm laughing at myself because my sister takes the mick out of me. What type of thread to use? You need something that's got a poly, a bit of a stretch to it. So I'm using the Sew All Gutermann thread. I'm using a pink because Becky's a pink mad. And the pattern is a 1 centimetre, which is 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm just going to sew down the two sides, making sure I reverse at the start and at the end. And then I'm just going to flip this round to do my second seam. Now this is the part where Lisa Lam doesn't mention this, but you know your seam, you can either cut it back or do what I do. When I have the lining, I actually don't trim back any of the lining, only my outer pieces. But you can if you press this open, it cuts away all the bulk anyway. So I'm just gonna, you're gonna laugh what I'm gonna pull out now. Now, most of you have got small rollers. I use my Cricut roller. So I'm just going to open up those seams. That might be, Gail, that might be down to your web browser that you're viewing on. So if you've got it open up in Google, Chrome, try opening it up on Explorer, because I had that on a Facebook Live a couple of weeks ago, and I was finding that people didn't have the correct or a strong web browser open. Okay, so right, so now I've got those seams open. Yeah, yeah. So Lorraine, unfortunately I can't do anything about that because it's to do with how Facebook transmits it over. There is something that I can do, but I haven't figured it out yet. Some people have. So yeah, I do apologise. It's all reverse. It always will be reverse. So on my pattern on the back, you can see I've got those notches going across, and then I've got a C for my centre. I've also done that as well for my main pattern pieces. And what I'm going to do is match up the two C's from the base and the lining and clip. Match up the other two C's on the other side. Then you'll notice that mark there matches that mark. So that's one brilliant thing about this book. I'm not saying it because it's Lisa Lam. I'm saying it because you don't get that very often in any of the, even some of the dressmaking books that I've bought. I've never had that. So I'm matching up all those little notches that I've made. And this one. And this one. And then open up your seam, bring it up to the base. You'll notice there might be a few tucks in the bottom of your base. Don't worry, that will come out eventually when you make the when you sew it together, when you go around that curve. And we're not leaving a turning gap with this bag. The turning gap is non-existent because we bind the top part of the bag, which for beginner, having a turning gap is quite being a beginner, having a turning gap is quite daunting, especially if the bag's quite bulky. So I started off with bags that had a bound edge at the end, so we were basically constructing the whole bag at the same time, a bit like what we're doing with this one. That's how I started off learning about bag making. It's a bit like quilting. So if you're a quilter, it's ideal because you know about binding. And if you've made a curly quilt or curvy quilt, you would have to have cut the bias binding, the binding on the bias. So you would already understand that. And obviously dressmakers understand bias because of obviously putting it around armour holes and neck holes and stuff like that. So now to sew this, I actually sew from the top side and move the bag as I go along. So I start off from one of the sides, not from, I start off from the front or the back part of the bag. I don't actually start off with the sides because it does get a bit tricky in that area. So, and to slightly reduce the bulk of to slightly reduce the baggy lining, I'm doing it just a bit over 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimetre. So I'm just going in by like 1/16 is it, or 1/8. So once again, remember to reverse your stitch because there's no going back at this point when you've put the bag completely together. Remove those pins or pegs as you go along. Did anybody get anything sewing related for Christmas? I didn't. First Christmas in 10-15 years, I got nothing sewing related. So, as you notice, it's ruching up a bit. Don't worry about that. It will actually. And you'll notice I'm lifting my foot as I go along because I'm just rearranging the fabric underneath the pedal, underneath the foot. Just take your time. Do an inch by inch going around that corner. It's not, you're not in a factory that has to make 50,000 a day. You're a one-man band and you only have to make one bag in a week. So it's not like It's not a rush job. Bag making, dressmaking, all the same. Quilt making, you can make the project last as long as you want, and just don't. Hi guys, not to really rush it basically. Saying that though, I used to make a couple of bags a day. It's all about smoothing out that fabric as you go along around that corner. Right, nearly there. Right, so that's the lining done. So what I said before about not trimming back the sides of your lining, you will need to trim back this part here. So if you trim it back by half, it won't be as bad because you'll be able to see it pushing out the bag when you actually put the bag together. So just going to go around. Now you will get a few creases at the bottom of this part anyway, so don't worry about it. I mean creases, I mean like where it's gathered or pleated. It's because the base is quite a tight fit. Right, just put that in the bin. So that's my lining done. You don't need to turn it inside the right way out, you just leave that as it is at the moment. And then you just repeat the same step for the outer bag. So we're going to put them right sides together once again and sew down the two sides. Who's still got turkey left? Tell you something, we had a massive crown for 4 of us, and I'm telling you something, it could have fed 5,000 people. And I'm a bit turkeyed out, and it's one of my favourite meats as well, but we're not having it tonight, I'll tell you that for sure. Lisa, is Lisa Lam still in? Have you got your doggy yet? Right, so once again, I'm just going to sew down the two sides. And this time we're going to stick to the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I'm just going to make my stitch length a bit bigger. And before I was sewing on a 2.4, now I'm going to sew on a 2.9. It's because I've got 2 layers of fusible fleece, plus the 2 layers of buckram, and obviously my 2 pieces of fabric, so the bulk's got a bit more thicker. Since I've had this book, when it first came out, I've made, I think this is my 8th reversible bucket. So trust me, you will use the patterns over and over again. So this time I'm now going to trim back this seam allowance by half. And on the other side as well. And if you remember that I have so many sets of scissors, because when you're trimming your foam or your fusible fleece, I advise to have a separate set of scissors for those, because your scissors over time will get blunt. So it's best to actually get a second set, or like me, have 5 sets of scissors doing individual things. So yeah. Right, so once again I've marked, and I know it's going to be upside down, the wrong way round, and that I've marked the C's out on both pieces. We're going to match up the C's. Now this time when we come to sew it, we've got this heavy stabilizer in the way, so I'm going to show you what I do. Matching up those 2 C's, and then matching up all the other little marks. Okay, and on the other side as well. And same with this one. Now I always don't draw my marks on until I've fused all the pieces of the interfacing and stuff, because once you've covered it with interfacing you lose your marks. So don't waste your time putting those marks on until the final steps of after you've put on the interfacing and stuff. I'm just going to get the bag to mould around the corners. Now you might want to use quite a lot of pegs around the corners. Don't worry, a lot of bag makers do that. Some people, right, and I have done this in the past, but I've had a needle break doing this. They staple, using a stapler, an office stapler, and staple the base into the bag away from where they have to sew, and then they sew. But I will tell you now, that's how the sewing quarter fans will understand. I actually sewed through my finger the once, and that was, I think the reason why I sewed through my finger was because I put the staples in, and because I wasn't used to putting staples in, but I was in a bit of a rush and I heard that putting the staples in would help. So my advice is, if you're going to do it, keep it away from where the needle is, where the needle's going to be sewing. Now a few more clips. Right, once again we're going to sew from the top side, and we're going to start off where one of the centre marks is, where I've put one of the C marks is, and we are going to stick to the 1/8, the 3/8 of an inch. And we're going to, when we come to where the corners are, the curves are, I'm going to slightly, because at the moment I'm on a 2.9 stitch length. When I come round to the corners, I'm going to reduce my stitch length to possibly a 2.3, probably less than the 2.3. So it will go around the corner a lot smoother. And also you'll see me once again lifting up the foot, ooh, as I go along. So I'm coming to where that last notch is, where the corner comes. So once again, like I said, I'm just changing my stitch length. I've changed it to a 220, sorry. And it just means it goes a bit smoother around the corners. And like I said, lift up that presser foot as you go along to move the bulk out the way, so your needle is only hitting the area where there is no bulk. And then I'm just going to go back to the standard stitch length that I had before, which was 2.9, going down that second straight. And because I've just come to that last mark on that side, I'm making my stitch length back to a 2.2. I do this on most of my bag making, but I've never mentioned it in my bags, my patterns, shall I say, because not many people like to change their stitch length as they're sewing along. But I learned it from having a bulky wedding dress, and there's a few curves in it, so I basically taught myself to change the stitch length as I went along while I'm sewing. And I'm just got the last bit of the corner to do, and then changing back to my standard stitch length 2.9 on the outside. So once again I'm going to trim back it's my phone. So, basically I'm going to trim back the seam allowance. Now, if you have take-out Chinese, or if you've got the Prim turning tube set, you'll need a pokey stick for making it a crisp finish. So we're going to turn this the right side facing out. You could iron this, but because I've used PU for my base, I'm not going to iron it. So what I'm going to do is get my stick right to where those seams are, and I'm hoping you can see this, but really like push it out to make sure it's a crisp finish. I do this on a lot of my bag making, and especially my leather bags, so just gives that nice flat bottom that you need for your bag, and you can roll it as well. You can also bash it with a hammer, and I'm not kidding, you will one day buy a hammer for your seams. Trust me, I've got a hammer just in my sewing box just for my bulky seams, because if you use a hammer on a bulky seam area and bash it as much as you can, you're breaking down the fibres within that area. You're not breaking your stitches or anything. So yeah, I will come to that later on next year, because what I want to do is take the live over to my leather studio a couple of sessions next year, and basically teach you some heavier machines and some heavier bag making tools that you can have the ambition to grow into if you're a beginner. It's what drove me into bag making, is because I visited a factory where I learned. I went to watch these high production of bags being made, and I saw like the leather machines, and I'll tell you something, watching that where my ambition was to grow in bag making. It basically made me have an ambition to make my bags bigger and better. So yeah, so I will take you over to a couple of sessions next year to my leather studio. Right, okay, so now we've got that, we're going to pop the lining and the bag together. So we're going to put the lining inside the bag, so that's wrong side to wrong side, and we're going to match up all the peaks. So as you can see, we're going to match it up all at the top, and we're going to go around pegging. I'm going to peg the peaks first, where the handles will end up coming out of, well, where the bias binding will be when we make the actual for the handles. Do this one as well. Now I've just noticed this Tula Pink fabric's upside down, so now it will obviously be back to front, but my mice, as you can see, my mice are upside down when they should be the other way. Oh, Rebecca, you melon. Right, so I'm also going to, I'm going to be matching up the two side seams as well. So open up that inner seam. Hope you get better soon, Sally. And then I'm just going to go around putting some clips in. We are going to have some better camera angles, hopefully sometime next month, because I'm having a rig built so you can have an overhead camera, and I'll be able to go from camera to camera in the Facebook Lives as well. So I'll have a little switch box underneath my table to switch from camera to camera. So yeah, the mouse ran down the bag. So I'm just finishing pinning near enough all the way around, and then for the last step today, we're just going to sew these two together around the top. Now the seam allowance is 3/8 of an inch, so we're going to do 1/4 of an inch around the top. Right. And I'm only going to baste it, so I'm going to use a big stitch length of stitch length 4. Now I'm hoping you can see this. Sorry, I'm having problems with my walking foot at the moment. The screw doesn't want to stay tight, so I've contacted Elmer and they're sending me a new screw, because I think the thread on the screw's gone weak. It can go weak because I constantly only use my walking foot, so they're sending me a few screws, bless them. I've spoken to them really nicely, and they've explained to me that because I use my walking foot all the time, the screws can go quite weak. so they are sending me out some free screws. Is there, so for the, so, okay, I'm going to let you into a secret now. So there is a free pattern coming out, the 3rd of January. It is an X sewing quarter pattern, but it's a revamp. It's free to all group members. So it's called the Wesley Tote version 2. The Wesley Tote version 2 has now got a zip closure. It's also got a zip pocket, and the construction's totally different to what it used to be. Because I've learnt a lot since I actually wrote that pattern, and believe it or not, I wrote that pattern 3 or 4 years before I actually went on to sewing quarter, so I've actually changed the pattern. So yeah, watch out on January the 3rd. There is a free pattern going in the group. It's a free download. I'll explain now. The pattern, obviously, I know a lot of people don't like downloading or don't understand how to download and print it off. So I will be getting some printed, and there will be a small charge for those. So yeah. So yeah, the Wesley Tote will be out quite soon. I'm just finishing off the photographs because with the legalities with the sewing quarter, I'm not allowed to use the photographs that are in the previous patterns, and the wordings have had to change. So yeah, so what material is suitable for bag making? What material is this bag suitable for? Anything. So I don't know if you know, Lisa Lam did the Audrey bag, is it, on the sewing quarter. She actually made it in PU and fabric. It can be made in PU as well, because I've literally have made one in PU. So yeah, so it can be made in cork, but my advice is, if you're brand new to bag making, not to use PU or cork on your first ever bag. Get to grips of how a bag anatomy is and how they pattern pieces match up and stuff. So use there's nothing stopping you using canvas or quilting cotton, or like I say, calico. Calico is great, especially if you got a Cricut machine. I find that calico loves Cricut vinyl, so the iron-on vinyl, it grips really well with the iron-on vinyl. Anyway, so that is the bucket bag, partly made, if you can see that. It's got a nice shape, as you can see. It's a beautiful shape. It does actually remind me of flower pot. So what I'm going to do next week is the 2 short binding pieces. So we're going to attach those on the front and the back of the scoop at the front, and then on the side here, and then matching up to go to the other side will be where the actual handles are produced as well, and there'll be your 2 longer pieces. Like I say, you don't have to actually cut out the actual binding if you don't want to. I will draw a diagram, and fingers crossed, if I draw it back to front, it will be the right way round on the camera. If not, I will put the picture in the group of how to cut your bias, because some people won't know what bias binding is. So yeah, right, giveaway time. Okay, so I asked my children, yeah, it feels like I've only got one child, because the other one's gadgets since Christmas Day not come up from his one of his little handheld computer things. So I asked where's the best place to buy the book at the moment, and I'm hoping I'm not going to get told off for this, but Amazon UK. I did look at the price the other day, and it's a bit cheaper than the actual retail price, guaranteed retail price on the bottom of the book. I don't know if Sewing Quarter has got any left. Have a look, because their books are going quite cheap at the moment, and it's horrible for me to say that, but jump on the bandwagon and get those bits that you need to make bags at a cheap price, so basically you can accumulate back your money, whether you make the bags for gifts or you sell the bags or whatever. Right, so the next session, like I say, will be all the binding on the top and how to make the handles. Okay, so the giveaway. There's only a simple question, and 4 lucky winners will win a book each and that kit, plus a voucher off my next pattern. And yeah, so so the question is, what's your favourite colour? This is why I'm laughing. It's such a simple question. So if you drop your answers down below, I'm not picking the winner today. So Sewing Quarter has all my money. It did in the sales with me too. So yeah, not going there. I saw my bank balance. So if you drop the your answers below, on January the 6th at 6 o'clock, I will turn off all the comments to this video, and underneath the answers that are a colour, I will put a number. That number then I will put in an electronic generator, and that generator will pick me 4 lucky winners. I will announce the 4 lucky winners on the 8th of January, which then, once I've announced them, if they're not watching, I will privately message them too. Yeah, so it's really simple, and I can't believe I could have asked that. I could have thought of that question myself, but Ellie, the daughter, says, "What's your favourite colour?" So yeah, what's your favourite colour? So yeah, right. So a few announcements. Next year, 2020, is a big year for me. I've got a few things in the pipelines that I'm hoping that I'm enticing everybody. I can't say it because I'm still in talks with one of them. And I'm working out one thing, which I'm personally doing most of the work myself with a friend. And it's not a bag maker or anything, she's a crocheter, but she has done this thing in the past. So she's going to help me. We're going to do something big and hopefully be the first in the UK doing it. Yeah, first in the UK doing it in bag making. But, yeah. So there is other things happening as well. So I'm working alongside some other guest designers. Obviously John, I've got that thing with John, which I've been so wanting to say about John's World and John's Sewing World, and the fact that he has previously asked me to be one of his guests on the show. Yeah, so yeah, I'm quite excited about that. There's other guest designers that I'm working with, like Sally Ann Harrison and Ellen and Victoria Kerrigan. So watch out for those. We'll keep you informed with those. Also, there is some designs for fabric panels that I will be selling separate to the patterns. And I'm working along Amy, the graphics designer that was from Sewing Quarter. So she is going to make the panels in different styles. You don't have to buy those panels. They will be pre-ordered to the patterns. There is not just the sewing quarter patterns coming out. There is, I think I've worked out there's 7 extra patterns to be released over the next year. So that's quite a large amount of patterns as well. Overall, all the sewing quarter ones will be all released by the end of next year, either revamped or under a different name. I've not figured that part out yet, so I do apologise. But I've only worked up to May time at the moment. So that's the adventure bag, the adventure backpack, the convertible. That is actually going to be 2 patterns, and I'm going to let you know one's a lunchbox because it makes a great size picnic, small picnic bag to go out with as well. So yeah, so there is a lot of things happening, so please watch your space and keep coming back every week for the Facebook Lives, and I'll be teaching you lots more. Also, I've been talking with the administration team this week, and they're probably getting a bit bored of me by now with all my ideas. Sorry. We want to, once the free pattern goes launched on January the 3rd, by the mid-January, we want to start a sew along. So each week, I'll be teaching a part within the Facebook Live on how to actually sew that part of the bag. And then you will go away and sew that part of the bag. And then the following week, I'll come back with the next part, a few parts. And we do that over 3 or 4 sessions. So basically, you can ask me as many questions as you come along on the previous session, previous few steps. So don't forget to enter the competition, the giveaway. Remember to put down your favourite colour in the actual comments. So more the merrier. Keep answering those. Keep answering that question, because I will say I won't remember who's put a comment. So if you enter more than one colour, it means that you got more chances of winning. So yeah. So yeah, next session is January the 8th, and it's going to be back in the afternoon, around about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock-ish. Yeah, Susan, you've got to help me with that one. It's a great idea, but you've got to help me with this one because it's going to take a lot of admin. Now, the next question is, we've reached 1,600 in the space of 5 weeks, and there is 4 admin, but one of the admin is my husband, and he runs quite a few other groups within Facebook. And he said to me that he sometimes struggles to see comments and stuff within my group. So I'm looking for a 4th admin, which is a main 4th admin. My husband's like at the back, like a silent partner. So I'm going to put out a thing next week asking for a 4th admin to come and join the team. Preferably someone that's made a bag before. It might only be 1 bag. That's good. But if not, a person that can sew better. So yeah, so please watch out for that, and then I will basically vet if that's Simon Cowell moment. Yeah, you're hired, Alan Sugar. so yeah if you can keep an eye out for that. I am struggling to do, because I'm a one-man band, I'm struggling to do designing, I'm struggling to do all the work at the back plus the admin of the group because it's growing so fast. And I've got 2 amazing ladies, Princess and Susan, that help me at the moment, but I could do with a 3rd one to help them because, bless them, they've got lives of their own as well. So yeah, so keep answering that question for the giveaway, and I will announce 4 lucky winners next week. And remember, if you see a number appear under your comment where the colours are, don't worry about it. That's for me to work out your raffle number. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next week. See ya.